is already covered by the class, right? With some examples. So in a formal way, we start with the definition of international business. We all are aware. In fact, we don't need to get into something which is very well defined. We cannot try to isolate a concept into the boundaries of a definition. Still, some efforts are made. Some important things which you will notice here in the slide that is being shared. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine, good. So we all understand that international business is basically when an organization expands its business operations into beyond its domestic or beyond its local market, when it goes into the foreign markets, maybe one country or two countries or more, you can call that as international business. Important thing that you see here in this definition is that it is not just the transfer or exchange of goods and services, but it also includes technology transfer. It includes the movement of capital. It involves the movement of information, movement of labor. So it is a very, very comprehensive term. We cannot just restrict it to only goods and services. In the present times, especially with the development in the information technology, we are finding that the IT-enabled services, whether it is education, whether it is business consultancy, whether it is medical services, all of these are gaining prominence, or they are becoming more important in international business. Do you agree with that? Do you have anything to say in addition to what I have already discussed? Yes? So what we see here, that based on what we have discussed so far, we'll try to define globalization. Again, this is something which we are already aware of, and we use this term very frequently. We often, have discussions on the globalized economy, on the global patterns of consumption, global financial management. So again, a very simple definition of globalization. Basically, globalization is a process. It is a process where the political borders which exist between different countries, they become less rigid, and they become conducive. They rather help in the free movement of goods, services, money, capital, investments, information, consultancy, advisory services, and the most important thing, that is the human resources or the people. So it is a process of lowering down the barriers which exist because of the political situations, because of the political, legal, or economic restrictions which exist between different countries. So globalization is basically is a step forward in the direction of economic cooperation, where the countries, the consumers, the political leaders, the academicians, the corporations, all of them realize that coming together or cooperating with each other in business or other affairs is ultimately going to result in some common good. It is going to, it is like, it is something which is a, symbiotic, which is good for all. And that's why we find that it is a process of creating networks of connections among the different actors I just talked about, whether it is the political leaders, whether it is the consumers, whether it is the producers, right? So, and the institutions like the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund or the apex banks of different countries, right? All these are the different actors at the multi-continental or the multinational level. So ultimately, globalization is a process where, it is the basic objective is of globalization is a borderless world, a world where people cooperate for primarily the different. Okay, is it okay so far?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any clarification? Anything that you have not been able to understand? You can ask me.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Sir, in the recent scenario, so my question is different from what we are actually seeing through this slide. Actually, the thing is that in this current scenario, we are we are seeing that the pandemic has badly hit all the economies of the world, and
Right.
and in the same case, it has also badly affect the international business as well.
Right.
So how can a business thrive in such a scenario as a means of living is dependent on the business as a means of um, earning is related with the work, and we can't shut down those businessmen cannot shut down their business,
Right.
and because their initial cost and very fixed cost is too high. So
Okay.
I would like to see your opinion on that.
In fact, it's a very relevant question, but as far as our discussion is concerned, it is slightly premature in the sense that we shall be discussing these things subsequently as we, develop a perspective for international business. And but what I would say as for now, that you keep this question. You jot it down somewhere. Even I'll try to make a note of it, and subsequently at an appropriate time, once we have discussed most of the things, especially about the international operations and international finance, then we will try to you know, look at the, a possible answer. I would not say an answer which is, universally applicable, but something which is closer to in the form of a solution. Okay. So
Thanks,
thank
sir.
you very
Thank
much
you.
for answer,
Thanks.
for this raising a very valid question. So now moving ahead, we are still developing a perspective for international business. And if you remember, in the last two discussions, another important thing that we have been able to discuss is that because of the breakthrough in the information technology, in the travel technology, as you see here, that international communication, transport, they have become much cheaper, they have become much faster, more frequent. And one more thing, that they have become much more accurate. If just look at the online buying scenario, whether we talk about Amazon, Flipkart, Mintra, and so I mean, I was recently I availed of a service because of the lockdown. I wanted to have a new pair of reading glasses. I mean, I wanted to have a basically a progressive glass for myself, and I did not want to go to a local, optical shop. Are you with me? So what happened that I downloaded the app of Lenska.com and tried so many different frames which which were suitable for my face size, which were suitable for my face, and at the same time I gave them the details about my the optometry or the numbers, the optic numbers which I use for my glasses. And within a matter of a week, I was I got those glasses home delivered, and the best part was that they were perfect in all respects. There was no mismatch between my requirements and what was delivered to me. Similarly, if you look at, this the barcode technology, which is obviously now becoming obsolete, there are different types of scanning technology which is now available, that all the products are delivered to the right address at the right time, and all orders are trackable. You can track your order around the globe. You can, so, and the best part is that the delivery is on a very, very predictable, it's very much predictable. They don't say that we cannot say when it is going to reach you. So the delivery of products is on time. You're getting the right products. There is a return policy. There is a flexibility in terms of whether you want to pay through card or whether you want to pay using cash on delivery. So all these things, I'm just giving you a few examples, that this is the closer integration, right, of the countries and the people, which has been brought about by the reduction in the cost of transportation and communication, and not just in the cost but also in the time which is required now as compared to the previous scenarios. You find that the products are being delivered in a much lesser time. The far away places from where your product is being dispatched and it is being delivered to your doorstep in almost, I would say no time, using it as a phrase. So breaking down of artificial barriers to the flow of goods and services, capital, knowledge, right? So ultimately, the technology like artificial intelligence, technology like virtual reality or augmented reality, all these things are ultimately, they are very helpful in tailor making the products and services for the consumers across the globe. So in fact, towards the end of this slide number 10, very nicely it is written, global village is a term used to describe the collapse of space and time barriers. I was talking about the time. So space and time barriers in human communication, especially by using the World Wide Web, enabling people to interact on a global scale. And now, pandemic that we all are a witness to, on one side or on one hand, we have been adversely affected by it. But at the same time, it has opened up new modes of doing business because we just cannot, sit idle and wait for the pandemic to be over. The life has to go on, the business has to move on. So whether it is the healthcare, whether it is the regular business, offices, education, schools, everything is being continued using the IT mode or the information technology. Here I'm using the Zoom platform, and there are so many other platforms which are being used. There are so many different apps or softwares which are being used for the, you know, in order to support the work from home mode of business. So now here you have a look at, a simple diagram which explains that globalization is a very, very comprehensive term which we have been discussing so far. So it's not just about the economic policies which are more suitable for the conduct of business across the different countries. It is also about the financial deregulation or financial liberalization. Now, if you look at the example of European Union, where around 17 countries, they adopted a common currency called euro. So that is also a very important example of financial globalization. In order to do away with the conversion of one currency into another, instead they chose to have a common currency. Similarly, cultural globalization, this is something which is more related to all of us as we are all consumers, that the world is gradually moving, I mean, to the exception of many, but still we can safely say that the world is moving in the direction of a global culture in terms of whether it is education, whether it is healthcare facilities, whether it is tourism, whether it is the sense of dressing and fashion, whether it is the food that we eat or aspire to eat, we find that most of the consumers across the globe, they are moving in the direction of having a common culture in terms of these. And perhaps that is the reason why products like burgers, pizzas, noodles, soft drinks, the wraps, sandwiches, you know, jeans, t-shirts, sneakers, all these things are becoming very much common, going to different countries for education, going to different countries for the healthcare, for the purpose of tourism. So we find that the globalization is a real force which is effective in influencing all of us in terms of economic policies, in terms of finance, in terms of political issues, legislations, in terms of culture. All these aspects are being affected. And what we see here that it is a two-way process. All these factors or all these major influencers, they are, you know, directly or indirectly linked to each other. Am I audible? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And these are some of the dimensions of economic globalization. If you look at this, that economic globalization, it comprises of global markets or globalization of markets, globalization of production, globalization of corporations and industries, technology, competition. So what we are finding now that most of the companies, their aspirations are no longer restricted to their home country. Right at the very beginning or the inception of any firm, their aspirations are global. They're always eyeing or they're always looking at the international markets. And it is with this kind of objectives they operate in the home market. I mean, home market is generally considered as the testing of waters. It is considered as the test market in which initially they test their products and services, which are subsequently marketed in the international markets. And that is why these products are made, keeping in mind the global standards of production and consumption, and at the same time keeping in mind the global competition, right, at the international level. Who are the competing organizations with, with whose products our products are ultimately going to compete with? And we are all aware that most of the organizations no longer they are restricting to manufacture, to manufacturing their products in their home country and then exporting those products to the international markets. They are now, you know, identifying those places where they can produce their products at the lowest possible cost, where there is a cheap availability, of raw material, the labor cost is low, and more importantly, that place is logistically suitable. I mean, that is from where those products can be easily transported to different international destinations, or the destinations which are, you know, deemed fit or considered fit for, you know, being considered as distribution centers. So ultimately, globalization is, you know, pushing us all in a direction where the markets, products, production standards, competition, technology, they are all, you know, of a common global standard. And if you want to stay into this market, if you want to survive in this market, then naturally one has to rise up to these international standards, right? So in fact, technology is one factor which is a factor that integrates the rest of the things, whether it is the global markets, whether it is the production systems, whether it is the competition, right? Whether, I mean, it helps in the creation of global corporations. There are so many companies which are which exist primarily because of the technology. On their own, they are not manufacturing anything. They are, if I would say in a very, very crude way, they are just order takers. They are offering the products online in the form of a catalog which is easily browsable. They are giving you the reviews, they are giving you the offers, and they are making it very convenient for the consumers to choose the products, to buy the products, product delivery, and sometimes even the return. If you find that the product which you had offered and got delivered, maybe in some, say, maybe it is not in the form in which it was desired, or maybe there's some problem with the size, maybe some problem with the color, or some defect is there. So you can always, return the product. So that is what makes it much more convenient. That is what infuses, the element of trust in online buying. So we will try to continue our discussion, and we'll just have a look at a very interesting metrics which is given here. There are two important aspects that we see here. One is the industry pressure to globalize, right? The other is the ability of the firm to customize the product to the home market, and whether it is, that competitive asset, whether that product is transferable abroad. So on the basis of this, we find that there are four strategies which emerge in this case when a product, we'll start with one basic thing, that when, if you look at the defender, where the industry pressure to globalize is low. There's not much pressure by the industry to globalize, and the product is customized to the home market. So it creates a situation where, you see here that the organization or the firm, it just tries, to defend its present situation, its present position in the market. What we see here, the pressure to globalize is low. The company's primary competitive strength lies in its deeper understanding of the market, because obviously you are operating in that home market, so you know the market well, you know what are the tastes and preferences of the consumers. So in such a situation, when you cannot globalize, when you cannot go global, so in such a situation, obviously the only thing is that is left to you is to defend your position, because you are unable to globalize, but you will always face the threat of competition from the global, companies. So for that matter, you have to have a very strong, defensive strategy. You should try to develop your local market in such a way that you have a strong customer base who are more loyal to your products and services, right? So here an example is given about the Videocon washing machines, that with the onslaught, in fact, Videocon was the first company which had launched washing machine in the Indian markets. It was the pioneer of this concept in the Indian markets. So when the international brands like Samsung, Whirlpool, LG, they started entering into the Indian market with the fully automatic washing machines in India. So Videocon developed semi-automatic washing machines with a washer and a, dryer separately in the same machine, and it started targeting the that particular segment of the market which is driven by the value for money, or the economy segment, right? So instead of taking the competition head on, the Videocon, they survived in the market by focusing on this value driven market segment with a semi automatic washing machine, instead of started producing an automatic washing machine, which they were not very, I would say that, which was not their competence, right? They knew that with a fully automatic washing machine, they would not be able to compete with the brands like Samsung or IFB or, you know, Whirlpool. So instead, they focused on their product, which they were good at making, and focused on the specific market, right? Is it okay? Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one last thing before we wind up for today. It's been you know, the second, another example is given here about the Mexican food company Bimbo. It responded to the global competition by defending their deep penetrating distribution system, right? So for them, in case of Videocon, it was their semi-automatic washing machine and the value-driven market. For the Mexican company, they their core competence was that they had a very deep distribution network, right, in the rural areas, right, with 4,20,000 deliveries daily through 3,50,000 stores. So this is obviously a very, very, rare achievement. So in such a case, I mean, this definitely created a barrier for a company like Pepsi, right? Obviously, when it started, when it entered into the Mexican markets, obviously reaching this scale of, you know, penetration into the markets is really very, very difficult. Even if your product is well known, it is a very strong brand, still reaching into the nooks and corners of the market is difficult, and it has to be achieved through, I mean, with the help of some kind of local players, right? And perhaps that is why Pepsi and